introduction, I will address some of the issues from the perspective of European periphery, and then maybe later continue from our perspective at the global level. So without further ado, I just want to describe where we are coming from. What is our perspective is that we try to approach to the issues of our analysis through a perspective of political ecology that is combining ecology and political economy to address relations between humans and nature. So for us, how we see also the topic of this, one of the topics of this conference is that we, in our work, we are trying to use and take commons more narrowly in a political sense as a political power and the way to use commons to constitute social power of the people and citizens to counter the hegemonial powers. We also derive some of main insights and analysis from struggle for the commons, but also approach very proactively to use commons in the terms of institutional innovation and as a way of participation. And very importantly for us is that we are also trying to use commons as one of the mechanisms to transform the state and the democracy, the state and the public. For us also it's quite interesting in our work to use experiences of self-governance and self-management practices in Yugoslavia that had a certain emancipatory potential. And we actually are trying to go back to the past in order to dig out some of the remaining knowledge from Yugoslav periods that are still alive with some of the people that have experiences, and to combine that with, let's say, a new approach of the new generations to the commons. Particularly, it is important for us to use it as a way to counter the privatization and the efforts of extractivism that our region is exposed to. So, where are we now? We already heard in the first presentation that we are facing a very deep ecological crisis with scarcity of resources and planetary boundaries, which we are talking about since the last 40 years from the Club of Rome. And together with that, we see increasing inequalities and increased number of environmental conflicts around the world. But we also see some sort of manifestation of resistance to the different detrimental investments. We know that the current development path is leading us further toward the future of instability. This is more and more clear, and of course, in this case, injustice. And we already also know that these injustices are ecologically very irrational, but we are just keeping as a humankind stepping towards the disaster. So the main question I would like to pose as a kind of axis of this intervention is that we have to, when we are discussing also the place of the commons in a transformative politics, we have to approach to the issue of growth by, as you were speaking about the needs. Of course, this is very much related, but the main question is how we can hope to have benefits of growth, how we can continue to hope to have benefits of growth, at the same time without tackling the downsides of the growth. As we are always faced with this imperative for sustainability, and as again it was said in the first presentation, we are somehow warned, and we are warning ourselves that we have to stop and slow down, because we are heading to climate catastrophe if we don't continue, if we don't succeed to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. But we also know that this break, this pause, or this slowing down is actually, in realistic political terms, incompatible with the existing structures in almost any state you choose, which is functionally dependent, for example, on a unsustainable energy system or any other unsustainable system. So I think it's very important that we discuss the issue of time, temporality, when addressing this imperative for change, and also to see if this urgency also brings some sort of contradictions, particularly adding to those who already are too pessimist, too much pessimist already. So we are at the moment stuck with the priorities, with the previous priorities, with the past priorities that were planned before, or actually exercised before, but mainly by the corporate power or state structures that actually multiplicated. But we are actually stuck with the priorities of unsustainable system, and we still did not set strong enough commitments to follow new priorities, as we know, at the global level. So it is the thing that we have choice, that we are actually, on the one hand, we need to respect the planetary constraints that we now facing after the few centuries of development, or we have to, that would be a wise thing that we accept these boundaries and somehow willingly dumb down, or on the other hand, most probably, although I don't like this binary dichotomical pictures, but we are on the other hand really faced with the unjust and calamitous disintegration of the natural systems. So it is a question if we passed the return point, no return point, and particularly knowing that there is almost consensus now that the continuation of the indefinite growth and the expansion is now undermining the whole ecosystem. It's not only that capitalism has been hostile toward the natural resources, the nature, and to the people. Now it's already clear that we are actually, as you know, we are studying the future, and it is just the moment how much of this future will be granted to us. And as you heard, probably Mark Zuckerberg recently. In public hearings, I'm sure that the similar things go with the geoengineering. I think that the political elites are mainly very much ignorant and lagging behind by the technological revolution that is taking place. Is it digital or is it geoengineering? It's the thing that the technology went much further than political power can actually follow it and control it, as also as we said in the financial terms, taxation is still very much behind. So of course, for the climate justice and for environmental justice, it's very crucial that we also critically approach to this dominant narrative of the Anthropocene, in which case all humans are more or less put in the same bag. This is like what is happening with humanity now, but regardless of the benefits of the great acceleration that some benefited and some did not, and this is a very important point, because when humanity is portrayed as a unified historical and political body, we are actually ending up with hiding different inequalities in the wealth and power. And now it's almost clear that privileges of the West, if we would call it let's say Western democracies, are now very much challenged by continuation of capitalism outside of Europe or outside of the United States, outside of Australia, Canada. But also we know that Europe has now invented circular economy just to keep up going with these challenges and keep up with resource scarcity, and not really because it has a deep commitment to paradigm change. I mean, it is also one of the myths is that since we have a ecological crisis, we are somehow behaving that we need to somehow we need some sort of expert intervention of the knowledgeable people who have technocratic knowledge and strategies and which they will implement, and by miracle this technological and technocratic and very techno-optimistic approach will solve, will deliver solutions. We know it is not, it will not happen that way, and the time is quite important to be discussed as we often realize that urgency we face with the climate crisis is at the same time not sufficient to mobilize social powers that could actually prevent business as usual to continue. So, to go into the second part, I think it's very important that we, when we try to think what are the potential perspectives to increase climate justice and environmental justice aspects, we need to remind ourselves what is the framework within which we operate and move. You know that as I described earlier, so the spending of the planet and the whole destruction of the ecosystem is already in advanced stage, and but on the other hand, we see that the capital system is not. It's just continuing. It continues through new extractivist projects. It continues through new privatizations of the public infrastructure, of the natural resources, wherever there is space and room. It continues to put the price on the lakes, forests, beaches, different water, different resources. It's also continuing with financialization of the nature, converting it to commodities. And it does it through very authoritarian, more and more authoritarian modality. What I think is also a point for discussion is we can also think of the date when there will be just too late to impose any sort of discipline in relation to nature and resources. So in that case, authoritarianism will be also potential instrument to introduce, let's say, more scrutiny or more disciplined way to use resources, but then it will be probably too late. So it is the main question is, do we have time to fix this mess? And who is able to fix this mess? It is, I mean, the answer is that we, of course the question is who are we? But we need those people who, and groups and collectives which are interested to strategize about possible future that can remain in a human decent level. It is important to discuss how do we design our approach in order not to lose again so much time, because you remember everything is very quickly hijacked by the corporate power or as the sustainable development or green economy very soon became something else. So you have very nice and good concepts, but if they can be easily captured or hijacked by economic or political powers that don't necessarily share the same vision, this will continue to be a problem. So the issue of urgency is again a huge problem because it's not a mobilizing factor. Everybody thinks that it's already too late, so what can we do? Or if we are heading toward ecological collapse, then it ends up with some sort of fatalism. So it is important to have this perception of time, what actually is possible to do in the remaining, in this short-term or mid-term perspective in order to have political implication, and I think it's very important to frame a narrative of hope that is not necessarily optimistic, because but we should find elements for a story that bring people together into more effective political action. I'm in the last slide. So I think it's very important that it's quite important that we thinking and designing these alternatives that at some scale can have important impacts. We need to kind of root them more strongly in societies, as I think that very often they're lacking strong roots in a society, and we know, as all the people said in the previous session, there are a couple of very relevant movements across the globe, as a bigger movement for Glenville or upscale cases of the municipalization that all have a limited positive impact in decoupling us from the growth paradigm, but again, it is in order to have implications for those who might lose from this climate crisis, particularly. We need to think of the ways how these movements can also work together and beyond the fractions, so more synchronicity and more coherence. And I think in all those which are mentioned are very important, but also I think that the last picture which I chose, it's a picture of a woman trying to break the hydropower plant wall and give space to the rivers to flow freely. It's of course hydropower plant investment action. I think that the feminist perspective is crucial as some sort of glue to as it's kind of it's very good to connect these ideas to be in the same body. Yeah, sorry for taking it too long. Thank you.